So this class is called the New Age Religion. In the Aquarian age, the invocative appeal of humanity and the evocative response of greater life to that cry will constitute the New World Religion. Indeed, the Tibetan tells us that the science of invocation and evocation will be learnt during the Aquarian age, so that aspiring humanity can invoke assistance and energy in hastening, accelerating their evolution. Blavatsky tells us, as the white ray of light is decomposed by the prism into the various colors of the spectrum, so the beam of divine truth in passing through the three-sided prism of humanity's nature has been broken into fragments we call religions. As the rays, by imperceptible shadings, merge into each other, so the great theologies that have appeared at different degrees of divergence from the original source have been connected by minor schisms, schools, and offshoots. Combined, however, their aggregate represents one eternal truth. Separate they are, but shades of human error and the sign of imperfection. Separate, they are but shades of human error and the sign of imperfection. So I think this prism is a great symbol for that. Of course, we have the seven rays, the seven colors of the seven rays here as well. All religions emanate from one source, showing their underlying unity. And the Tibetan tells us that the New World Religion will be derived from Buddhism and Christianity. And hence the importance of Wesak, because we have the Buddha as the representative of the East, a much older religion, and the Christ, who is a representative of Christianity. But the Christ is also referred to by his Eastern name as well, Lord Maitreya. Christianity has been a bridge between Buddhism and the new Aquarian religion. And we are told that there are three fundamental religions, the Hindu, Buddhist, and Christian, which has its roots in the Egyptian religion beforehand. And so there's a remarkable similarity between these religions and their founders, Krishna, Buddha, and Jesus the Christ. Well, to your left here we have the various symbols of different religions: Islam, Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism, Hinduism. I think this is Chinese Taoism here. I'm not sure what this one is. It might be Zoroastrianism. And this is from Isis Unveiled by Blavatsky. She gives this comparison of the various teachers that have come forth. Krishna, the oldest, and we're talking here exoteric timelines. They are actually, as far as Krishna goes anyway, 5,000 years ago, from a royal family raised by shepherds. The Buddha, 2,500 years ago, son of a king, first disciples were shepherds. Jesus, of course, 2,000 years ago, from the royal family of David, shepherds worshipped him at birth, and shepherds are a symbol of Mercury, the messenger. Of course, we know some of these ancient hymns too, Christian hymns, of shepherds watch their flocks by night, and the humorous derivations of those as well. And coming back to the Krishna column here, the sheep represent humanity. Krishna was an incarnation of Vishnu, the second aspect or the second ray, and was worshipped at Mathura in India. I had quite an experience when I visited that city. Then with the Buddha, we have the lamb represents the Christ child, regarded by some as an incarnation of Vishnu as well, or the solar logos. Jesus was the good shepherd, the incarnation of the Holy Ghost, Then the son went to Mathura in Egypt. Jesus, in fact, went to India. Probably to Mathura in India, but other places as well. Britain, we are told, he travelled a lot apparently in his short life. Or was it? It is rumoured that he lived to a much older age. Krishna was persecuted by Kamsa and escapes. The king slaughters thousands trying to get Krishna. Well, I'm not sure. In a Catholic legend, Saint Josaphat sees the father king slaughtering. Jesus was persecuted by Herod and escapes to Judea. Herod massacres 40,000 to get to Jesus. Krishna's mother, Devaki, was the Immaculate Virgin, but he was the 9th son. Buddha's mother, Maya, also a virgin, and Jesus' mother, Mary, also a virgin, who gave birth to others. So some of these things are not quite literal, they're symbolic. But of course, there is an esoteric truth in divinely conceiving. Krishna was beautiful and omnipotent at birth, produces miracles, cures the lame and the blind, casts out demons, washes the feet of Brahmins, descends to hell, liberates the dead, ascends to paradise. He was very busy. The Buddha, endowed with similar qualities, performs similar wonders. Jesus, of course, casts out demons, washes the feet of disciples, dies, descends to hell, ascends to heaven after liberating the dead. The dead can be seen as those who are not awake as well, not literally dead. Krishna crushes the serpent's head, creates boys from calves and vice versa. Lots of symbolism here, lots of allegories and metaphors. Buddha crushes the serpent's head, abolishes snake worship. Jesus crushes the serpent's head, transforms kids into boys and boys into kids. I'm not sure what that is exactly. Krishna was a unifier, persecutes the clergy, calls them hypocrites, divulges secret unity or the immortality of spirit. Buddha abolishes idolatry, divulges mysteries of unity with God, nirvana. He was persecuted, driven from the country, dies by poison under a tree shaped like a cross. And he had his faithful disciple Ananda. Jesus rebels against Jewish law, denounces the scribes, the Pharisees, defies the law, and divulged secrets, crucified on the cross. John the Beloved was his faithful disciple. All of them die on or under trees, symbolic of life, wisdom, knowledge, and of course the crosses of initiation. The crucifixion being known in the East in particular, as I might have said last week, relating to the 4th degree initiation. Kid was the old meaning of baby lamb, says Irina. Yes, indeed. Thank you for that. Just going back here for a minute. Joe says, what is the source? Oh, no, I've already answered that. Okay. Very good. So this photo here to the right is a picture of the Francis of Assisi church in Assisi that I took when I visited there several years ago. A really beautiful place. As Aquarius approaches, crystallized boundaries are starting to break down, and hence world religions will break down and the unity of all will be realized. Humanity are at a low ebb spiritually. Orthodoxy is not an attractive option. World religions are not working because 1, the church is unable to arrest evil. 2, spiritual leaders are incompetent in serving world problems. 3, the majority of teachers are sectarian or denominational in their approaches to God. This relates to the developing minds, the separateness of Piscean age, the non-inclusiveness and having no inclusiveness of the Aquarian age. 4, young people refuse church and its rituals because they are boring and stultified. 5, hence cults find a ripe expression and sidetrack the major religions, quite often with personality power trips. 6, there was a growing emphasis on Eastern philosophies, which is great. This is part of the dynamic merging of East and West that will occur more so in the next 2,000 years of the Aquarian age. 7, astrology, numerology, magic are attracting more adherents. Churches are empty, attended only by conservatives and reactionaries. Well, that's true to a degree, I think. When I'm in a new town traveling, I often sit in these churches, have a meditation, and I see other people, other travelers do the same, as well as, of course, the local conservative parishioners. 8, the presentation of spiritual realities and truths are in an obsolete language. Thee, thy, the gnashing of teeth, and so forth. These all kind of conjure up kind of vivid images that have this kind of very strong sort of Judaic sort of flavor of the fear of Jehovah, watch out or Jehovah will get you. Jehovah being kind of a lower expression of Saturn being the law. So, and of course, not to mention all the other veils that have been drawn over the message of the Christ at the beginning of the Piscean age, such as St. Paul that the Tibetan tells us about because of his scorpionic character. There was, again, a certain veiling of the original message or distortion that crept in that stimulated the Mars quality of the 6th ray that was coincident with the age of Pisces. Its more martial and bloody aspect, the bloody Christ on the cross, so to speak, as opposed to Neptune, the co-ruler of the 6th ray, which is a far more refined frequency. Neptune, the mystic and the visionary. So answers will come from 2 sources. 1, the thinking masses who are growing intellectually perceptive, causing a revolt to the orthodoxy. And of course, we can see this all around us at the moment in a lot of religions, Christianity in particular, Buddhism, however, and particularly recently, as per my article in the latest newsletter about the Dalai Lama. And Judaism, there are less and less younger generations taking to Judaism, to traditional Jewish practices, for instance. I'm not sure about Islam, but I know that there are some loud voices, that, especially female voices, that are calling for reform in Islam. 2, overshadowing source of truth and light has always brought revelation through the ages. The presentation of divine truth has not kept pace with the unfolding intellect of humanity. That's why these ageless wisdom teachings are so priceless. They're such a gift for us hungry hearts who crave this information. So people are asked to give unquestioning faith but do not understand, and from other people who claim to understand but seem no more intelligent. That's a big one. I remember my local parish priest who I had to learn my catechism with to get confirmed when I was about 13 or 14. He was a character. And the thinking minorities of all world religions will eventually break down religions. They will seek new ways to interpret truth in light of the teachings. Of course, the Buddha says 3 things cannot be long hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth. And we are seeing the truth breaking out everywhere in the last year or so as a response to the last 3 years of lies and the continued attempt to pile on more lies. Theology is the science or study of divine things or religious truth. Since theology's inception by St. Paul, it has strayed from the simplicity of thought and lifestyle which the early Christians had, such as the Gnostics, the Essenes, the Desert Fathers. And so they became too mentally focused on the scriptures, which relates to humanity's developing mind, and read the letter of the law instead of the spirit of the law. And this concerns the Ray 5 influence in this first root race of humanity becoming more independent thinkers, but this is the shadow of that development, or the collateral damage, if you like, of that Ray 5 development. And so it's something that I call stodgy theology, you know, where the spirit of the law has been replaced by the letter of the law, and can be such a lifeless thing, a soulless thing. So evil today on the planet is partly the result of wrong orientation of mind and an emphasis upon the material. Religion has failed to preserve truth in purity. Christ has been forgotten in a war of words. He said, I give you one other commandment, love one another. Churches have been built while people starve, hence belief in the divine love has been lost. Cathedrals of the Middle Ages are a great example of this. They still stand today, and they are magnificent buildings, but at the cost of poverty and humanity going without in those various nations in Italy, France, Britain, in the last 10 centuries. The Tibetan does have quite a bit to say about that in some of the blue books. He says the church leaders with their pomp and ceremony, their jeweled vestments, silver communion sets, how can they give spiritual guidance? The outer shell we are looking at, not the inner. This has a separative effect upon the congregation, as if the clergy are superior. The altar is at one end and separates the sinners in the pews from God. So it might be better with a circular arrangement where everyone is in the middle. So the spiritual and intellectual needs are not met by church seminaries grounded in old interpretations. The words of Christ or Buddha are obliterated through wrong thinking in Williams' books. Again, stodgy theology. So this has been one of the problems of the Piscean age, even though Pisces itself is a sign of feeling, of very much related to the heart as well, and yet the strong separative mental theology has predominated, as well, of course, has Christian wars in the name of Christ. Onward Christian soldiers, I should say. And this again is the Mars rulership of the sixth ray, one of the rays that comes through Pisces, but a ray that was incarnate throughout the Piscean age very strongly. Humanity is ready for light and spiritual vision, true values and right human relations. Only the great fundamental principles covering past and present, providing a platform for the future, will really meet human invocation. 1. The fact of God, whatever his name or her name is in religions. Eastern religion has an emphasis upon God immanent, that is, remaining within, indwelling, inherent, whilst Western religion is God transcendent, going beyond normal limits of the material world. The new world religion will be a synthesis of East and West, God greater than the whole, yet God present in every part. Of course, we see many images of the Christ and Buddha as brothers. In fact, esoterically speaking, that is true. The one who holds the office of the Christ today took we are told, the third initiation with the Buddha in an ashram back in Atlantis. And the Buddha, in fact, is from the moon chain evolution, whilst the Christ is from the earth chain evolution. So there's a blending of moon chain, earth chain evolutions also represented by these two beings. This picture on the right I took in Sri Lanka, in northern Sri Lanka, at a place called Anuradhapura. Very beautiful ruins. And this is called the Moon Temple. And one of the most striking Buddha statues I've ever seen. It had so much presence, as did many of the other statues in this particular park. The Buddhist Christian difference synthesis. 1. The Buddha is the outcome of introspective training, the quieting of the outer functions and activities, emotional reactions, mental chatter. Point of tension allows God within to be contacted. This is the sentiency at the heart of every atom, and absorption into an eternal state of non-being and being, mind, what the Mahayana Buddhist calls the mind of God. The Mahayana Buddhism is regarded as the highest kind of Buddhism. Mahayana and Vajrayana. To call forth imaginatively from the mind is from Vajrayana. Vajrayana does concentrate on visualization per se, of creating something that wasn't there before. Initiation in the East is the science of the evocation. There is an observation and control of the personality. Meditation brings and wisdom develops compassionate understanding, liberation from the material. This the Buddha exemplified. And secondly, it shouldn't be a 1 there, it should be a 2. The Christ represents the Middle Eastern and Western traditions, the Persian, the Assyrian, the Chaldean, the Egyptian, Zoroastrianism, Judaism, Christianity, Islam. God realization takes place outside the personality. Lazarus in the cave, his spiritual body was free, access to the wisdom of the external universe. Western systems of astrology, Kabbalah, prayer, contemplation, ritualistic observation, etc. The object is to evoke an intuitive response to external energies through sound knowledge. And eventually this fell below the threshold of awareness. The love of God and humanity is emphasized, promising consequence of union with God in some heavenly paradise, which is the nirvana of the Buddhist. The law of invocation or prayer embodied by the dispensation of Christ. The Buddha taught that God was unknowable. Enlightenment was not to be confused with an attempt to explain what God is. Christ taught of a transcendent, all-embracing, yet personal God. Enlightenment was union with God. Again, we have another picture of Christ and Buddha being very palsy. Quite a nice picture, painting that one. So any questions or comments so far? I notice we've got a few more latecomers that have arrived. Welcome. Do try and make it on time to these meetings, everyone. They start, you're given the correct times in our email that comes out every week. If you don't get that, do subscribe so that you can get the correct information. I realize the time zone thing can be confusing, but most of you are used to it now, to know what time this class starts. So the New World religion will synthesize invocation and evocation. It will be embodied by the next spiritual leader and will take the place of prayer and worship. There will be a scientific and intelligent use of invocation and evocation. This is truly an occult science, invocation and evocation. The Tibetan dedicates several pages to it in one of the blue books. The main education of the New Age will be to prepare humanity for the approach of Christ. And in fact, whereas the Christ used to preside over the first initiation, this will be given to groups of dedicated disciples in the Aquarian Age to perform that initiation for candidates who are ready. Other great principles. The realization that we can have a relationship with God. Inherent in all is a sense of divinity. Christ in you, the hope of glory. Or closer is he than breathing, nearer than hands and feet in the Hindu tradition. Same message. And if anyone does a study of comparative religion, they'll affirm this fact, all the similarities. Just the newer religions have really replaced the older traditions, but they have the same themes running through them as we touched upon earlier. 2, the fact of immortality and immortal persistence. There's no escaping a sense of eternal life. It is ingrained in us as a sense of preservation, hence 2 great laws, the law of rebirth, the law of cause and effect. In other words, karma and reincarnation, which we've covered, of course, in earlier parts of the course. And karma, of course, is the law of cause and effect, as it says here. You reap what you sow, as it says in the Bible. In the West, though, the churches have not recognized the law of karma, creating a theological impasse or cul-de-sac. They outvoted it at the second Council of Constantinople, as I recall, when was it? In the early centuries. It might have been about 500 AD or something like that, where they outvoted, I think, only 3-2, strangely enough, of not recognizing the law of reincarnation. What a terrible mistake that was. But again, it points to the fallibility of man and his distortion of the teachings, even with advanced initiates like St. Paul that I mentioned before, who is now, by the way, the master of wisdom known as Hilarion, the custodian of the 5th ray, or Shohan of the 5th ray. In the East, the karma theme was overemphasized. And so there was a manana mentality, not Mahayana. Manana meaning, let's put it off till tomorrow. So there was a negative acquiescent attitude that has been based upon a continually renewed opportunity. So it's okay. Karma will look after it. Wait till tomorrow. Okay, I've got something here in the chat. Let's see now. Hugh says, as a Baha'i, the Baha'i faith, I've learned that Baha'u'llah, I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly, is the promised one of Christian, Buddhist, and all spiritual traditions, and that the Baha'i faith is the future world religion. Indeed, the name Baha'u'llah or Allah could be conceived or construed as one of the names of the Christ. And the Baha'i faith may not be the Baha'i faith that you're referring to per se, but the new universal religion that will be coming in the Aquarian Age where there is a synthesis of all religions, and of which the seed is the interfaith dialogue that is taking place in the last few decades. So I don't know that much about Baha'i, but I have visited their temple in Sydney, which is magnificent. It's a huge temple on top of a hill that can be seen for many miles. One of the passages in the Bible is that something like he will come from the clouds and all eyes shall see him. And the Tibetan says in the Blue Books that this quote refers to him coming from his retreat somewhere in Asia, in not the Far East, but Central Asia, sort of north of the Himalayas, and that all eyes shall see him on TV. And so he may not come from any particular country as such. And that stands to reason, because he will be everything to all men. You know, he'll be from no one country that can claim their national pride in bringing the Christ forth. Although, of course, he did come forth in a Jewish body 2,000 odd years ago and rejected the Judaic crystallization of the day. So I'm just seeing stuff coming up in the comments, then disappearing here. I'm not quite sure. Oh, hang on. Here we go. Joy says, Master Wakul referred to the destiny of the nations, to the destiny of various countries. Yes, he did. There's a book called The Destiny of the Nations, which I refer to frequently in my newsletters. Joe says, Leonie Hodson has put forth a number of propositions related to the future role of Russia. That idea of the new religion coming out of Russia might be one source. Yes, in fact, I do vaguely remember there is a quote about that from the teachings. Let me just try and find it for a moment here in my program. Russia, religion. This is the Bailey Books on CD, so it's very fast. Here we go. Behind the closed doors, I'm quoting here from Destiny of the Nations, page 61, where he says, behind the closed doors of that mysterious and magnificent country, a great and spiritual conflict is proceeding, and the rare mystical spirit of the world Arjuna, in a very special sense, will emerge, that new and magical religion about which I have so often told you. It will be the product of the great and imminent approach which will take place between humanity and the hierarchy. From these two centers of spiritual force, in which the light, whichever shineth in and from the east, will irradiate the west, the whole world will be flooded with the radiance of the Sun of Righteousness. I'm not here referring in connection with Russia to the imposition of any political ideology, but to the appearance of a great and spiritual religion which will justify the crucifixion of a great nation, which will demonstrate itself and be focused in a great and spiritual light, which will be held aloft by a vital Russian exponent of true religion, that man for whom many Russians have been looking, and who will be the justification of a most ancient prophecy. Indeed, yes, thank you for bringing my attention back to that. And this also, what I just read out, relates to the fact that Russia's spiritual motto is I unite the two ways. In other words, unite East and West. And this is happening right now in very rudimentary stages with its relationship to China. But of course, Russia has a deep connection already with the East through the Mongol invasion in the 10th centuries that left its imprint very, very strongly on the nation, and which will serve as a future bridge to the East. And in this sense, Russia will play a synthesizing role for the two hemispheres of the planet. the Eastern and Western hemispheres throughout the Aquarian age. And this is completely in line and aligned with the fact that Russia is an Aquarian soul and has a seventh ray soul as well. So the synthesizing process is very strong, and also there's a very strong, as I said before, the Russian Orthodox Church, with or without its crystallizations, is still very it's still a very powerful force of faith for the people. Nicholas Roerich, the Russian painter and initiate, painted many pictures of Russian saints and traditions like that. So excellent suggestion there. Thank you. Giselle says, I felt that the Russian presenters at the conference just passed. I felt that from the Russian presenters at the conference just past. I love looking at the Agni Yoga work. Indeed, the Agni Yoga teachings of Nicholas and Helena, or Helena Roerich was the main amanuensis, of course. Yes, I recall Svetlana's presentation at the conference, very beautiful. And just to remind you that all the videos and resources for those talks are on our website, Aquarian Wisdom Retreat Center, whatever. Maybe Inez can put in the link there. I always forget the link. With /presenters at, /participants at the end. That's the right link that you can access all that from. I think you've had that sent out in emails to you anyway. All right, so an excellent diversion there. Let's go back to the, where were we? So there's two laws of rebirth and cause and effect. Joe says we often forget that the roots of Christianity predate the Roman Catholicism and papal enunciations that further distorted and separated those following the principle of love brought forth by the Christ. Absolutely. The message of love has been drowned in a war of words and theology. And of course, Christianity goes way back to Egyptian times. Thank you, Inez. She's just posted that link I was mentioning. Very good. So Christianity overemphasized immortality. Eternal happiness was dependent upon an acceptance of theological dogma. My karma ran over your dogma. It's the funny saying. Originated from the Old Testament, where God is the hateful and jealous Jehovah. How can God, a God of love, condemn to an everlasting torture all who do not believe in a theological interpretation of the Middle Ages? This is what's messed up Christianity, essentially. Human distortion. The underlying factors governing all human conduct and aspiration are to know the immortality of the soul and for the inner spiritual person to work out their own salvation under the law of rebirth in response to the law of cause and effect. We cannot evade this law, which will condition us until we become perfect. As the saying goes, be ye perfect unto the measure of the fullness of the stature of the Christ. And there's also another one similar to this, to the fullness of the stature of the Christ and beyond. In other words, because humanity is evolving in higher and higher turns of the evolutionary spiral, what we achieve when we go through the same initiation as Christ has done, many lifetimes down the track, will be a much greater achievement or much higher sort of level of attainment. And that this is the evolutionary law. And so we stand on the shoulders those who have come before us. So the continuation of revelation and divine approaches to humanity, the need of humanity for God of God for humanity. I am God. We are cells in the body of the Logos, literally. Light has always come forth when demanded by humanity. Spiritual teaching has always come. So when we liberate ourselves at the fourth initiation, it's like a light bulb goes off in the body of the planetary Logos and adds to the harvest of human souls over millions of years that enable the planetary Logos to take initiation. This is a very deep esoteric truth that I don't have time to go into, but there's just a taste of it. History of humanity is really a demand for light, contact with our Creator, subsequent giving of light, approach of God to humanity. Here we have this demand for light as invocation, and the response is the evocation. And there's always an avatar, a savior, a world teacher who has brought fresh revelation, a hopeful incentive, someone to save us, someone to follow, as the David Bowie song goes. Some approaches are major, some are only in a nation or a group. Here's where the fact of spiritual hierarchy must be known. Another great approach of divinity and spiritual revelation is now possible and imminent in our lifetimes as we approach 2025, of course. Can our present ideas be enriched by some new idea for which we as yet have no name or understanding? The divine triplicity of the Father, Son, and Mother was an entirely new truth presented to humanity 2,000 years ago. Fellowship, brotherhood, world cooperation, peace, based upon right human relations is becoming clearer as the theme of the Aquarian Age. There's a realization unfolding for humanity of Earth as one whole entity of delicately balanced forces, hence the idea of one God. And this is, I think, expressed beautifully, really, in the last century of greater environmental awareness, which has also been played on in a negative aspect too, to exaggerate. But essentially, people are realizing that we're all one with our environment, with the animal kingdom, with nature, and so forth. So a new truth will be proof of the immanence of God, the Christ within you, the hope of glory, not the inscrutable God outside of us or separate. Glory of God is the innate divinity within all humanity. So to recapitulate, the New World religion will be based upon humanity's relation to the divine, the fact of immortality, the continuity of divine revelation, and the constant emergence of messengers from the divine center. So, and this is particularly accelerating now as millions of humanity are waking up, especially in the last few years. I think those who attended the reincarnation class, I mentioned that one of the Tibetan's prophecies is that the fact that there is no death will be known to humanity within the next 100 or 200 years, which is an extraordinary statement that has kept humanity trapped in fear for millions of years since the ancient days of Atlantis. So this is just on the horizon, and we're finding in the last few decades, for instance, so many extraordinary experiences of near-death experiences and so forth, of young children having past life memories, taking their parents back to a place that they've never been, that they know they've been in the previous life. And the constant messages will be coming. There'll be loads of messengers coming in this next century. The hierarchy themselves and the disciples of hierarchy. This will be one of the most incredible periods that the human race has ever experienced. This Aquarian cycle of 2,000 years, but also a greater Aquarian cycle 25,000 years, which has only occurred, is occurring now for the 7th time in the history of the 5th root race. So it's an extraordinary window of opportunity of the Aquarian themes of brotherhood, sharing, and so forth. Irina says, saying as a Russian by origin myself, I would like to share a view that what needed to come out of Russia already came out in the 19th, 20th century. We can name quite a few names, not limited to Blavatsky, Ouspensky, Gurdjieff, etc., the entire family of Ruriks, and the 20th century Grigory Grabovoi, with vast teaching that is still evolving. Russians laid a base and could do more, if not communist revolution and its aftermath for spirituality between 1917 and 1998. Now the new religion is the matter of the world's spiritual workers. Indeed. Thank you for your comment, Serena. The keynote of the new world religion, the divine approach, draw near to him and he will draw near to you. Invocation, evocation, meditation, study, service will build the Antakarana. Buddhism and Christianity will be the foundation of the new world religion. And this is the specific work of the Buddha and the Christ. Their merging of light and love will bring a new revelation to humanity. Christ will embody this synthesis. When the work of the Buddha is consummated within our integrated personalities, then the full expression of Christ or love can be consummated. Desire will be repolarized into aspiration and love from the solar plexus center to the heart center. Then light and love will find a radiant expression within our transfigured beings. The transfiguration, of course, is another name for the third initiation. Heart and intuition and the awakening of the Ajna center as well. These things we can reflect upon and brood upon over this next couple of days, tomorrow being, of course, the exact full moon. There is a conference on with the University of the Seven Rays at the moment, and there's going to be a WESAC meditation online about 2:30 p.m. GMT tomorrow afternoon. If you want to go to that, of course, there is the entire next 5 days that will be the conference presentation. So if you're interested in that, many of you are familiar with those people. They're brothers and sisters of mine. Edgar Cayce predicted the hope of the world will come out of Russia, says Michelle. Yes, there's a lot of great information about Russia in The Destiny of the Nations and Races, or The Destiny of the Nations book by Alice Bailey, but also in Rays and Initiations. And you'll find quite a bit of commentary on my website about Russia. If you go into search by a subject on my website, esotericastrologer.org, then find the section called Nations. I do have separate sections for the nations, a separate section for Russia. So you might find some things there relating to some of these comments. So a lot to reflect upon and chew upon, is there not? A couple of good books on comparative religion. I'd recommend the one by Annie Besant that was written over a century ago, the Theosophist. I can't remember what the name of the book is now, but if you Google something like comparative religion, Annie Besant, you should get the book that she's, it might be downloadable free in PDF anyway now. Books like that can help show the unity of all religions and break down their sense of separation that so many fanatics in religion have.